Hi, welcome to each and every one of you. It's exciting to have you with us. Tonight we have as a speaker Dewald de Tooy, and he truly lives with a bright star smile that he says he even uses Aquafresh to keep it smiling and shining. He and his wife have been married for 16 years, and now at the 31st of October, that will be 16 years. And together they are raising two energetic children, and 50% of whom are boys. So, what a joy. He describes his wife as a real star, which is why he says he had to do Bright Star himself. We're so glad that she motivated and inspired you, Devil, because he would like to sparkle just as her. That's a beautiful statement. His wife, she works in PR and marketing, but after the tough lockdown period, she started exploring her entrepreneurial side and she launched her own guest house. And recently she became a real estate agent. That's amazing. And he says she's already making her mark there too. So that is what she's doing, all while she's caring for the precious 11 and 13-year-old children. So when Dewald reflects on his life purpose, he says it is to live every day as if it's a holiday and to spend his time meaningful before God and investing in five people every day. Isn't that amazing?
So today, my English, I think I have more people that I'm invested in.
Yeah, more than five. No, yeah. Would you like to say that again, Devil? I just want to make sure I'm not missing it.
No, no, you're fine.
Is it fine? Thank you, thank you. And then I asked him what he values, what his values would be, and it's a story on its own once again. His values paint a wonderful picture of who he is, a deep relationship with God, and he uses the inspiration by Eugene Peterson that gives the idea that Christ plays in 10,000 places. Yo, Dewald, that would be a nice conversation on its own, just to hear you sharing that with us. His second value is a strong commitment to his family, choosing wisely what to say yes to and when to say no to protect what matters most. And then his third value is simplicity, and he says just that. Love it. His fourth value is a daily practice of gratitude, asking his children each morning what they are thankful for and sharing his own answer with them too. And then finally, the value of a spirit of adventure, which he'll be sharing more about with us tonight. So please join me in welcoming our precious Bright Star facilitator, pastor in Caledon, and sharer of adventure. Welcome, Dewald.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Yeah, it is a privilege to be with you tonight. And when Amanda asked me to do this talk, I immediately said yes, no problem. And then about two WhatsApps later, she said, "Oh, but by the way, it's in English." So I think I learned a valuable lesson. Get all your facts before answering anything. So you will have to bear with me tonight with my English. So I'm going to use here and there some Afrikaans words as well. And please, if I don't say something correctly or you have a question about something, please ask. Just make a note, and we have some admins that will look into that. So my story is actually part of my ministry. I have the privilege to be in a Dutch Reformed Church in Caledon and to point to the Lord, to just see Jesus in different situations and to know that we can be with Him every day, that we can make that time out of a point of view that time can be slowed down. There's a lot of things that need to be done. So I also have a full calendar, but to do it in such a way that it isn't a burden, but more like a holiday. So that's where I come from, that point of view. So our church has, over the years, given the ministers lang verlof, long-term leave in the past, but that was changed a couple of years back, and they changed it to sabbaticals with the idea that the minister must take the leave. It can't be bottled up. It can't be paid out by the congregation. It must be taken. And that was in one of those 30-day leave cycles that we have every 3 years. So every 3 years, we get 30 days off just to ground ourselves again, just to make sure that we have the time that we need to do the work that is asked from us. So a couple of cycles back, I just took a walk. So I don't know if there's any of you who watch Crocodile Dundee. I see there's a lot of women. So I think the men would more likely be able to, or would more likely have watched this film already. Can I see if there is some of you who watch Crocodile Dundee? You can just give a shout or a thumbs up or something like that if you have seen it. I see there is a few of you who have watched Crocodile Dundee. Now, I love him. And he said at one point he's going on a walkabout. And then it took, I think it was 18 months that he went on a walkabout. So I didn't take so much time. I only take a few days to just have a walkabout, to see more of my situation where I live, but specifically to come to grips with people in our communities that are down and out, that are on the streets, that don't have a home to go to people who just come to that point where they are literally on the streets every day, everywhere where they go. So that is where I thought about how can I go on a walkabout in a different way? Or how can I go and just walk for that matter? And I will get to that just now for our commitment. What we're going to do today or tonight, I would like to just share with you, talk it through with the intention to give you some inspiration, to just get to that point where we can see where we're at as God's children. But also, I would like to ask if you have maybe a pen or paper with you. I'm going to say a few times some of the values of Bright Star. So we did a lifestyle, and I thought about it, some of the modules that I'm just going to point to. So you can make a note of that, and at the end we can talk about it, or it would be awesome if you can also share a bit about your life stories or experiences that you had that maybe can shed some more light on the way we live together every day. So there's going to be those pointers towards Bright Star. But I would also like to ask you, um, when somebody comes to your house, to your front door, the first feeling, not a long sentence, just a word, the feeling that you get when you open the door and you see the person there that is maybe not dressed very nicely, the person that are a bit out of shape, who you can see has a tough life. Sometimes we see it in the person's eyes, but that one that you know is going to ask something of you, maybe ask something to eat, ask somewhere to sleep, ask some help of you. What is the first feeling that comes to mind when you think about that? When you think about that knock on the door and you just see this person. So keep that in mind throughout the talk, please. We're going to circle maybe back to that because I'm going to do every day that I was on the road, I'm going to connect it to a feeling. So I'm going to speak a lot about the feelings that we have, the emotions regarding our lives. So please keep in mind the feeling that you will get when somebody knocks at your door. Just a small tale, my daughter, when she was about 3 or 4 years old, there was somebody knocking at my pastorie. So I lived in a church house. So there was somebody knocking at the door, and she went to the door and she opened it, but she's really now 3 years old. She could just get to the door handle. And she opened the door, and then there's still a trolley gate between her and the person standing there. And she saw this guy, and she wasn't sure. And she's, hello, and then she asked him just this one question, but really out of that childish innocence. And she asked him, are you a scallum? Is jy 'n scallum? Nee, dit vra sy vir die wild vreemde man by die deur. This total stranger. She just asked him, are you a scallum? And the guy was flabbergasted. He didn't know what to say. And I came in and I talked to him, and she was smiling, but there was no judgment. It was just, she wanted to know, point of fact, are you honest or are you not? And that was for me such a beautiful, sometimes when somebody knocked at my door, I would like to ask that. Just, are you here for the right reasons, or are you here to tell me something that is actually a lie? So with all of that in mind, I said to my congregation that I would like to go on this walk. So there was a few rules to the walk. So the first one was that the congregation will decide which direction I must go in. So it was one Sunday morning, and I preached that morning, and afterwards I asked my congregation, they must just give me a direction, a wind direction, north, south, east, west, anyway, where I must walk to. So the idea is I just walk into that direction, and then I will take it from there. So that was the first rule. They will give me the direction. I asked my congregation also, if there is some of them that would like to come and join me on this walk, they are more than welcome to drop in, to walk a few kilometers with me, and then drop out again. So the idea was to inspire a bit, to see that we can do stuff like this also together. And then the third rule was that I will travel lightly. So I took nothing with me. No money, not an ID. I had a small backpack. It was that sail type backpacks from Omnia. It's a very, very small pack, almost like a Checkers bag, that size. And in that bag, I put a change of pants and a change of shirts and 3 pairs of socks. And that was it. Other than that, my wife put in a black bag for when it rained, that I have something over my head. And then she asked me, she's also always the voice of reason. So my wife asked that I must please take my cell phone with me. So that's all that I took on this trip. I wanted to go for 14 days, and she said, no, maybe we must cut it down a bit to 7. That would be better, more appropriate. So again, I listened to her, but we didn't know how long the walk will be, or will it be shorter? Will it be longer? Where will I be after that time frame? So that was the basic idea, just to go out and walk with nothing. And with that, I would be in a position where I need to ask people for help. So I will need to be the guy that stands at your door and asks, can you help me? The fourth rule was that I couldn't tell the people who I was or where do I come from. So I couldn't use my title as a minister of religion at the Dutch Reformed Church. Please help me. I need some place to sleep. So I had to go and knock on the door and ask, can you help me? Do you have a place for me? Do you have food? Do you have water? And then I'm in the grace of the person where I stand at. So those were the few rules that I pinned down for myself. And then we said, okay, we must start. For Bright Star, number 15 in our modules, it was inspiration. So maybe through this walk, we can get a bit of inspiration to really see each other again as God's children. I will, by the way that I'm speaking, I will make mention of Bright Star's themes, as I mentioned already, but also there's some facts that will come to you, but the facts are from my perspective. So it's never to to take anything from anybody. It's just to say, this is how I experienced this part of life, this part of my journey. So the facts you will hear from time to time, feelings, definitely take note of feelings that you hear, feelings that you feel actually, the guy at the door, but also other feelings, feelings of gratefulness, feelings of thankfulness. So throughout, you can maybe make a note of that as well. And then the last thing, maybe to look at the foundation that's being built. So to say that through this, I'm also building a piece of my life in the presence of our Lord. So that is more or less where we can speak to each other about. So my journey started that Sunday morning. It was in April, and it was in the Cape. So it is the beginning of our rainy season. And my congregation said that I must walk in a northerly direction. There was a cold front coming in, so they knew there will be rain in the next couple of days. And they said I must walk north. So that would have been beautiful. I would have walked over a little mountain, about 300 meters, 400 meters, just outside of Caledon, and then towards Greyton. And then there's a beautiful pass that you can walk up towards McGregor. So that would have been great. But when I reached the summit of our small little mountain, I saw rain everywhere. Everywhere where I looked, I saw the rain. And now I just started. I'm 40 minutes into my first day of this walk. And I saw, oh, this is going to be tough. And when I got to the top of the mountain, I looked around, I turned around 360, and I can see everywhere the Oeverberg. You can see beautiful all directions. And I thought, I'm going to adjust. I walked this first few kilometers in the northerly direction, but I see a little bit of sunshine. There's a small bright spark just in the totally different direction, in the opposite direction. And I adjusted on the mountain, and I started to walk down through our town again towards Hermanus, towards the sea, actually. And I followed that small sunlight piece that was just illuminated for me. And it was actually a hard climb down. It started to rain a little bit. But then when I went through our town, it stopped. And I walked actually quite nicely for a few kilometers. And when I was walking on this road, there was one of our congregation's members, but die he's not 'n Afrikaans sê ons, hy trap nie die kerk se drempel deur nie. He doesn't come a lot to church. So I think I saw him once or twice before that in church. But that morning he was in church, and he knew about this walkabout that I'm going on. And he stopped next to me, and he said to me, and now it's about 4 o'clock the evening, he said to me, but if I need somewhere to sleep tonight, I'm welcome to come and sleep on his farm, but I must walk there. He won't give me a lift. I must walk there. But now I was walking already for about 4 hours, so you start getting tired. But it's the first day, and the feeling that I had was, I'm feeling strong. I'm ready for this. So no problem. I will walk to his farm, which is still another 10 kilometers or 2 hours walk from there. And I walked there. On the way there, it started raining quite nicely, like that you are wet throughout. So I walked in this rain, and at one point I thought, oh, it would have been so nice if he just gave me a lift. But I wanted to experience. I wanted to see how it is to walk, to be there on grassroots level, to just be without any help and experience the elements, experience everything that a guy on the street will experience. So that was a great learning curve for me to see the first day. There's no freebies or handouts or anything that just comes to you. You will actually have to put in the miles. I will actually have to work. I will actually have to walk the whole way. So I walked his farm, and it was very nice. That evening, he sorted me out. He gave me something to eat, he and his wife. and we had a nice evening together. They gave me somewhere to sleep the evening, and the next day I would go then further on towards Hermanus. But the first day feeling that I had was the feeling of strength. I was still operating out of my own strength, out of that I have actually in reserve. So that was where I was that first day. The second day started early morning and it was raining quite a lot, very hard rain. And I had to walk towards Hermanus. There was this knock on my door early morning, and the oom wat my kom that gave me a lift, he knocked on the door and he said, but he wanted to show me his farm. And I was never on that piece of his farm, most beautiful farm. He came with this old 2.4 diesel Toyota bakkie, and he let me in. But everything inside, when we breathed, all that, the fog against the window screen, we couldn't see, so we have to open the windows. So it started raining into the bakkie. He's just like, it doesn't matter, let it rain, he just want to see. So we went through his farm, and that excitement, something that he just shared with me, that other days I would live past it. I would be too busy to see, to stop, to be there. But at that morning in the rain, we saw the most beautiful morning, the valley, the Hemel en Aarde Vallei lying open in front of us, the rain pouring down in this beautiful areas where it was just amazing. So it was actually quite nice to just spend some time with him. He dropped me then again at his home, and I walked towards Hermanus. I started walking about two kilometers down the road. A friend or congregation, somebody was in the church the previous day. He said he wanted to come and walk with me, and he brought a minister from Kleinmond, who will also come and walk with me. But when they found me, they said they called my wife to ask where am I so that they can find me, and she directed them to where I was. And when they found me, they said, but they don't want to walk in the rain. They will give me a lift. I can get into the bakkie, and then we will take a drive. And when it stops raining, they will get out and they will walk with me. So then I got in with them, and I said, it's fine. And we drove a while in the Hemel en Aarde Valley, and when the rain stopped, he said, okay, now I'm fine, I will start walking. So we walked about 20 kilometers or so towards Hermanus, and it started raining again. So he wanted to walk dry, but we were onto the mountain when it started raining. So we were also drenched totally. We were wet throughout, soaking wet. I tried to use my black bag, so I put a black bag on and over me, but that is working for about 10 minutes, and then you're in any case totally wet, so it doesn't work that well. So when you see the guys on the streets with the bags, sometimes we feel, okay, it's fine, they have a bag over them, but really it's not helping that much. So I was walking with him, and the feeling that I got that day, on the second day, was just a feeling of thankfulness. Just where the first day, where it started, when I thought I was very strong, I've got this is going well. But even that first day, I began to feel it is tough. It is not as easy as I thought it would be. Second day, this is the second day, like here. I thought that thankfulness is amazing. Just to see people who can come and share a bit of your journey with you, just to be with you. And that was so awesome to see people who just come and find you and walk with you. And that's something that's still today just with me to think I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to be somebody's savior. I can just point them to Jesus. I can just tell them about Jesus. I can just maybe share a bit of their journey with them. So that second day with those, and that was the only time that somebody came to walk with me. But that gave me a lot of courage and encouragement to take on the rest of the journey. So the second day I slept in Hermanus in Voelklip. Those of you who know Hermanus, so I had quite luxury accommodation the second day. It was very nice. Somebody who heard also about the story, actually this friend of mine's father was living in Voelklip, and he heard about it, and he said, but we must come to him. We walk through Hermanus. His son and me must come to him, and then he will see if he have place for me that evening. And I had a very good night that evening in Hermanus. My clothes were dried out. They put it in the tumble dryer, so everything was dry again. All my clothes, all 2 pairs of them, and I could take the journey on the next day. The third day, I started on that beautiful piece of road between Hermanus and Gansbaai. It's on, hulle noem het the Plaat, die Plaat. It is on the coast in the reservation area. So you walk between the sea and the reservation. So it's quite nice on the sand the whole time. And the woman, Hermanus, he gave me a 500 milliliter bottle of water. So I had 500 milliliters of water. And he gave me, I think, an apple and some other fruits. I said to him, no, I must find my own food for the day. He wanted to give me more, but I said, no, it's fine. I will sort it out as I go along. But I didn't reckon how long it will take me to walk that 20 kilometers. On the sea, beautiful, but it is quite a long walk. So you start and you walk, and I took off my shoes, and then on the sand, you start to get blisters. So I felt at one point, oh, no, this is not nice. This is now only day 3, but I start getting blisters on the bottom of my feet. And I put immediately my shoes on again, and I walked with my tackies on the rest of the road. But it was quite a long walk. At one point in the beginning, I had my water and my apple, and I sat there next to the sea, and it's this beautiful feeling of just being totally alone, but in a positive way, alone in front of the Lord, just time with the Lord. And it was so refreshing just to have literally nothing with you, just a bottle of water and an apple and time with the Lord. So that was something that stood out for me, something very special. So I always think that when you're on the journeys of life, and when I see people who come and knock at my door, that they can also have beautiful moments. It's not all bad. Isn't it all doom and bad stuff that's happening? Sometimes the Lord finds you with the most simplest of things, just with a bottle of water and an apple. So that second day, on my way towards Gansbaai, it was really nice to do that introspection, to walk and to feel the blisters, to feel the aloneness, but to feel the presence of the Lord. On the way towards Gansbaai, I saw, okay, this is longer than I expected. And I started to think, okay, where will I be sleeping tonight? Because that's the whole time in your back of your mind. Where will I sleep? Where will I get somebody who will look after me, who will help me? The previous 2 nights, it was actually quite easy. It was in the beginning, I was feeling strong. But when I approached Gansbaai, I was a bit afraid. The guts to go up to somebody and knock on the door of a complete stranger and ask for help. I don't know if any of you have done that recently, but to go to somebody you don't know at all and ask them something, it is actually a bit terrifying. It is really something that you must get your mind around, or for me at least. So I was sitting, when I reached Gansbaai on the end of the day, I was sitting there for about half an hour on the sidewalk and just contemplating, how will I approach this? How will I get to that point to walk up to the stranger and just asks, can I sleep here tonight? And I I got all my stories straight. I see the people, and when you walk also, you see everything in slow motion. When you drive in a car, it's quite fast. But when you sit on a sidewalk or you walk in a street, you can see literally this guy going past you quickly. Or when you approach a door, you can see, oh no, this one is shutting it quickly in your face, or they are busy with something else, or they just turn around and walk away. So you see all these reactions of people, and now you must go and ask for something. The first guy I went to, I asked just for water, and his answer was just two words: no water. Just that, geen water. I said to my, I get water nie. And I thought to myself, oh, shame. That's terrible. He lives in this beautiful house with no water. I wonder how he gets along. It's going to be tough if he has no water in the house. How is it possible? No water in this house. But I didn't say anything. I just turned around and walked. The second guy, he said, no place for you. But with the exclamation on for you. And that really, it hit me hard to think that somebody would say, I don't have place for you. I have place for somebody else, but not for you. And that was one of those things that just stuck, it gets stuck in your mind. Um, the third person who I asked, and in Kleinbaai, when you get into the town, there's a lot of guest houses. And his answer was quite to the point: go and ask at the guest house. And I was also smiling inwardly and thinking, yeah, sure, that didn't come up to me. I thought about going to the guest house, but I don't have any money. So the guest house main source of money is when I come and pay to be a guest at their house. So that wasn't an option for me. So that left me with the idea of what to do next. So at that point, I was struggling a bit with the disappointments, um, to see also in our own lives how things go wrong, and then to keep on going, the challenge to keep on going. What happened next was, for me, so beautiful. I was with these people who just show you the way. They don't even want to know what your story. They don't want anything to know of you. And then the beautiful thing happened. There was two children playing in the street. To them, just, hi, how are you? I'm walking in this road. Is this a nice road? Just that sort of thing. And I saw there was a lady listening, old lady. She was, later on, I found out she was 82 years old, but she was their grandma and she was looking after them. But now she was checking, who's this guy speaking to the children? And I just told them, oh, I have also two children and they're almost your size. And what are you playing? And so they saw the grandma is listening more intently. And then she came down and she started talking to me and she offered me a glass of water. So I said, oh, that would be awesome. I would be much obliged if you can give me something to drink. That would be really nice. She went, she said, I must come and take the glass. And when I got to a kitchen door, I just stood outside the house. I saw a church calendar on the wall. And I asked her if she's in a church. And then we started talking. She said, yes, she is in a church. But she knows who will help me. They have this new pastor in their church, and he's amazing. He will help me. Shame now, I'm so stressed up for the pastor's side because I don't want to put him in a difficult position. But the Tannie said she will take me to this new priest of theirs, and he will definitely help me. So then I climbed into a car. She took me to, she had to go and drop off her grandchildren. So she said she will take me to his house and then she will go and drop off their children. But she stopped at the pastor's house and she said, okay, there's a house, you can go in, but I will wait. I will wait to see if you're all right. And it was about 4 or 5 o'clock the evening. But then, like in Bright Star, we have this communication thing, so you can see body language, that sort of thing. So when I knocked on the door, the guy opened the door, but his body language, I could see immediately, I'm not going to get any help today. He saw me, he walked out of the door, and as he walked, he closed the door behind him, and he started walking to the street, to his car. So I had to go behind him. I'm 2 steps behind him the whole time. I have to follow him, and while I'm following him, he's telling me why he can't help me, and he's explaining it very nicely. So nothing wrong with that. But I saw that this is not going to work, and in the way of well, while he was talking, I told him, but I will see him next month, May, the month of May. We have a Senate meeting, and then I will see him at the Senate meeting. And immediately he stopped and he actually looked at me and he started asking, okay, but how am I going to see you? Why are you there? What are you going to do there? And I told him, but I'm actually a Dominee van Caledon and I'm going to be there and I will meet him there again. And his attitude changed a bit, but I also told him no hard feelings. I understand the situation completely, but I'm going to go back to the Tannie in the car. He talked a bit to her, and then I said to her, "But Tannie, um, I will be fine tonight. He can't help me tonight, but he has other meetings that he have to. So I gave it a soft landing and nothing to take away from him because I put him in a difficult situation as well. But Tani was so nice. She just said, well, in that case, you come and stay with us. She still didn't know that I was a minister of religion. She knew nothing about me, my name, and that's about it. And she opened her house to me. And that evening, I went back to her house. And before that, it was this beautiful drive. Her husband died about 2 years before that. And she just said, but she will go and show me all the beautiful places of Hansbaai, all the places that she and her husband used to go to. And she took me on a drive to the lighthouse. And she actually showed me the light again, where sometimes we as God's children can put a light beneath a bucket or we can be so busy with our own stuff that we forget that something simple or something so finite, like showing somebody else something that you love, can change their day. And that was for me so beautiful to get to that feeling from almost I don't know where I'm going, uncertainty, and to find at the end of the day through 2 children and an old lady. It is important for me to make note of that. It's the children and the widower, an older person who actually had a time to help. The people who should be able, who have all the means to help, are sometimes too busy to help. So that was for me a bit of enlightenment to know that I can share my life and my my inspiration with you tonight, or even if we can just share something of that the Lord gave us today with somebody else, it can really make a difference. It doesn't have to be big things, sometimes just the smallest of things. When we got back to the Tannie's house, she lived with her 2 sisters. Now she was 82 and her younger sister was 79 and her older sister was 86. But the older sister, like in Bright Stars modules as well, she had conflict. She was very mad, like in really mad. She didn't speak to her sister when I got into the house. She said, how can you bring somebody into our house? It is not possible that you can give this complete stranger a place to sleep tonight. How can you do that? And that is just in the room next door. So I heard everything. And this other lady was very mad. And then I got up and I said to them, okay, who I really am. So they gave me some boarding, they gave me something to eat. So the rule is then I can tell them who I am, where I come from. But the older sister, she never lit up. She kept to that point, no, it's not right. This guy can't sleep here. And the younger sister just said, it is my house, he can sleep. and she gave me a very nice place to sleep that evening. And the next day, she gave me some egg, egg tubies, some egg on bread. And she said, but I can take that as a going away present. So I had something to eat for the next day. So on day 4 of my trip, and it is just walking for inspiration, walking to see how it is when you have nothing, when you are down and out and you must look into somebody else's eyes for the basic needs. So day 4, I went from Gansbaai to Baardskerersbos. Now in the Overberg, that is quite a nice road. It's beautiful. You see the sea, you see the mountains. It is really a very, very nice road to walk, or actually to drive. Walk is a bit different, but to drive. And at that point of the journey, it was for me, I saw these viewpoints, these places where you can go and you have just this beautiful view, but then you see also 1 kilometer or 500 meters. And I started noticing that I was so tired of walking. And remember, this is day 4, so it's not a lot, né? So, but you started to get pains where you don't think there would be pains. And when I was walking, I started noticing that I don't have the capacity to walk to the viewpoints. When there stands a board that says, or a sign that says 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers, it's too far. I have 40 kilometers to walk that day. So 2 kilometers in another direction is too far. I can't do that. And I started to see also in myself, I was just looking in front of me. You get to that point where you don't look at the scenery anymore. And I love a beautiful view. That's so I never miss it. But at that point, I started to look just one step ahead. Where am I going next? Where can I put my foot down? So you start to forget all the beautiful places. So it was something just by the way that I got to see that you look differently at the area around you. And I wonder sometimes in our busy world if that doesn't also happen with us. We get so overloaded. Our our strength are at such a low point that we just look at the next thing to do. And we don't see the people around us anymore. We just see the things that need to be done, the next step, instead of the next person that I can maybe help or who can maybe help me. So that was for me just something that was in my mind, in my heart, that the Lord just showed to me. So I was walking on this road towards Baardskerersbos, and the people in Baardskerersbos is a bit, you guys who know the Cape or Western Cape province, Baardskerersbos people are a bit more rugged. That's maybe a beautiful descriptive name, a bit more rugged. But when I got there, they would just shout at me from the house. So the fence and where the fence is and where the house is about 20 meters. It's big properties. So you have to walk a bit into the property before you get to the house. So in Baardskerersbos, it was amazing how the people will just shout at me from the house. So will just shout in the most beautiful Afrikaans words, go away. And they will just tell you from the stoop that you're not welcome there. You don't even have a chance to get to say, hi, how are you? They just let you know, not here, not today, you're not welcome. So in Baardskerersbos, I wasn't even able to speak to somebody. And that was for me heartbreaking to think that you can let somebody just go off into the world without even a possibility of a conversation, no chance to let the light of the Lord shine. So Baardskerersbos was hard. I went there, there was a little church, and I sat at the church. There was one of those asbestos tanks where the rainwater get into. That was the only water that I can get in my hands. But now I was walking 30 kilometers. So I had about 500 ml water again with me. Those not reusables, those plastic bottle waters. So that was finished, and your mouth gets dry. You're tired, and so I had some water at the church, the little church that was there, and then I took the road towards Elim. Also, a very hard walk. That was tough, and in Elim, I got to that T junction. There's a little T junction. Elim is a small town. And when I got to the T junction, I sat down and I just checked the area. Now I see Bredasdorp is another 30 or 40 kilometers. So, but in Elim, there was these guys that was coming in and out of this little dilapidated house. And I saw, but I was sitting there for about an hour, hour and a half, just recuperating. And I saw they would come in and then they will go out, and then, but it's looking very shady. So it's all of these strange characters going in and coming out. And at the end of the day, somebody came and I asked him, what's going on? Somebody who lives there. They say, no, 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 you don't go there. They just said that. Somebody else came and say, they just told me, no, that was the druggies era. That's for the druggies. So I felt I must maybe walk on from Elim. That is not maybe the best place to sleep that evening. So in Elim, I was standing there at the T junction and I started to hike to just see if I can get a lift towards Bredasdorp. And it was very interesting. For me as a white guy, there was a lot of people coming through, but nobody stopped and asked me if they can help, if they can give me a lift, nothing like that. But there was also guys, black guys that was hiking, and there was also colored guys, and we all stood there in maybe like this. I was standing on my own, and the black guys were standing with the black guys, and the colored guys with the colored guys. But there was a different system for each of us. So for me, as white guy, it felt like nobody's helping me. Everybody just drove by. I thought, oh, I would just like to climb on the back of your bakkie. I don't want to sit in the front. Just give me a lift on the back of the bakkie. But everybody just keep on speeding by. For the black guys, they have the money system. So that we see a lot of on the roads. They give a 10 rand and then there comes a taxi or a sort of payment car and they stop and I get a lift from there. For the colored guys, Elim was a colored community as well. So there was a lot of people who know each other and they will just stop and people get on and off and there was a whole system for them. But I was feeling at that point very cast out. Nobody will even see me. A bit of hopelessness, maybe. So at that point, I felt something like that hopelessness of I can do nothing about the situation. That's just how it is. So at about 6 o'clock the evening, I started walking towards Bredasdorp. It will be a couple of hours. I made my sums for how long it will maybe take. So I thought I would be in Bredasdorp around about 12 o'clock that night. But I still haven't had anything to eat for the day. So I had a little piece of bread that the Tannie gave me. So I was quite hungry, thirsty, and now this is this long walk that's lying in front of me. And I started the walk and I thought, now I must hike. So I tried to hike again. In the beginning, you hike with this anticipation. When you hear a car, you turn around and you smile and you give your nice Aquafresh smile and you thumb in the air and you think, okay, this guy, he's going to pick me up. And he just goes past you. So it will go a couple of times. Then after a while, you stop smiling. It's just you just look around and you put your thumb up. And then after a while, you don't even put your thumb up. You just walk. You don't even look around. You just start walking. You don't care. You just one foot in front of the other, that type of thing. And it's amazing that hopelessness that just consumes you. You think, okay, you almost cut off from everything around you and you just do one thing, one foot in front of the other, time and again. So that was where I was. I thought, okay, it's fine. I'm going to look for some place to sleep. someone, one of the water gutter, where the water goes down. And just before I got a nice place to sleep, a guy stopped. I didn't ask. He just stopped next to me and he said, but he will give me a lift. So he took me to Bredasdorp, and I got off at Bredasdorp, and it's still about when you get into a town like that. And for my purposes, I thought, okay, it's about 8 o'clock the evening at that point. I just want to go to the church. It's amazing how you just think that the safest place will be maybe at the church. The wind was howling. It was a terrible evening. Strong, strong wind blowing. And I walked to the church, this beautiful church. You could see it from everywhere. And I walked to it, and I got to the church, and there's this beautiful fence around it. I can't get closer to the church. The fence just stops you dead. And where I could get to was the municipality buildings. So I was standing between in this sort of a little corridor between the municipality buildings and contemplating, okay, where next? Where should be the best place to maybe sleep tonight? The church is off limits, but maybe here at the municipality there would be a place for me to sleep. And while I was standing there, this one guy came up to me. One of those guys, his eyes didn't stand still. He was looking all over the place, but he don't look at me, but he's talking to me and he's asking me all these questions. Where are you from? What are you doing here? He's just talking to me, but he's not really listening. And at one point, he was starting to pick in his teeth with a fork. And he's in his teeth with this fork the whole time. And I thought to myself, oh, tonight I'm going to get stabbed with a guy with a fork. He's going to rob me and stab me with that fork. Now I'm just looking at the fork. I just want to see what is he doing with this fork in his hand. And at one point I said to him, but I'm waiting for a lift. I think that is the lift. I saw a car about a couple of meters, a couple of 100 meters from us, and I started to just walk fast towards the car, and just to get out of this conversation with this guy. And while I was walking towards the car just drove by. And when I looked next to me, here this guy is again. He's just coming up and speaking to me again. I think, oh, this is a difficult situation. And while I was thinking, and I don't really know what to do, there's another car coming around, and I was waving. So at that point, I was really going like this and stopping the car, and I just hoped the people stop. And actually, they stopped. And when I get to the car, I say to the people, "Hi, how are you?" And we started talking, and I was now so flabbergasted with this guy that is here with me. But when I turned around from the car, the guy was gone. He just ran away. So I said to the people, "No, I need some place to stay tonight." And the Tanny looked at me and she said, "But aren't you the priest from Caledon?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I come from Caledon. How do you know?" And at that moment, it was friends of us from Caledon whose parents lived in Bredasdorp. And they just stopped there, and they, at the end of the day, gave me some place to sleep that evening. Die oom het vir ons like a barbecue gemaakt. He brought some chops for us. Lovely evening that they had with the people from Bredasdorp, and slept very well. And then the next morning, or the feeling that I had that night, actually, after this guy and after Elim in Baardskierersbos, the whole day it was all of these rejections and almost a feeling of what can go wrong. People that can hurt you, people that can kill you, people that can do anything. You're really in their grace. And that evening when these people, the kind strangers stopped at me, I just thought that is the feeling of God looking after his children. He just sent somebody at the right time, at the right place, and I had somewhere to sleep that night without me even having to ask for a place to sleep. They just stopped there and it happened. So that was quite a nice feeling for me to just experience the Lord looking after his children. So the next morning, day 5, I got up and you wouldn't guess with what. We had some nice chops the previous evening. So at my tender age, at that point, I got up with gout. So my toe was hurting pretty bad from the gout. I get gouts once in a blue moon, so very, very few times. That morning, I stood up and I had a pain of the gout in my foot. So I greeted the people where I slept and um, I headed off like this hunkerpunk. So I was just struggling to walk. And the woman said, but he will give me a lift. I said, no, 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 I must walk. So I will walk. And I walked, and about a kilometer from the house, I thought, okay, now I must go to the pharmacist. So I must go to somewhere, I must get some help. Colchicine is the pills that I need. I must go to the pharmacy and get some of those. So I walk into the pharmacy and I realized, but I don't have any money. So I was contemplating then, um, would it be okay to maybe just take the pills? So I can take it. I will come back next week and pay for them, but I'll just borrow them maybe for a while and pay later. So one of my values that's being tested. Um, and then I thought maybe I can go and just tell them that I need the pills and I will come back later to pay for them. And I was just thinking all these things. But before I had to do anything, the person where I slept at the previous night, he came in that morning to the pharmacist and he said, oh, you are still again. And I said, well, yeah, I'm still here. I'm looking for the gout medication. And he laughed and he said, oh, you must just have asked. You will buy it for me. So he bought for me the medication that I needed. I took the pills and then I was off to Napier. So the pills take a while to work. So I was really struggling to walk. It was quite tough going to get to Napier. But on the end of the day, I made it to Napier, a hard day's walk. Really, really a tough day. But when I walked into Napier, there was this second-hand shop, but beautiful shop. I was there quite a couple of times with my wife beforehand. And I thought I'm just going to get a bit out of the wind and out of the weather. I'm just going to browse through the shop for a bit. And I walked into the second-hand shop. And but it has this beautiful furniture. So it's big stuff. It's not small stuff. It's big stuff that's the whole place. And when I got into the shop, the guy that's working there, he had one look at me. He just looked up from behind his desk and he told me, you can put that bag there. That's all. I must just put my bag somewhere and then I can come into his shop. This is a little small bag. I thought to myself, I won't be able to steal anything with this bag. You have a double bed and a wardrobe and that sort of thing. How will I steal anything from you? But I put my bag where he wanted me to put it. And I browsed a bit just to get out of the wind. And while I was browsing, I told him, Nehemiah, I was here at your shop before and I was a couple of times at your shop already. And he said, yes, how? I said, yeah, I'm from Caledon. I'm actually working there in Caledon. And my wife and we bought this from you. And when I started to talk like that, he just changed with me. And I told him, what was I busy doing? I'm just walking just to feel how it feels when you have nothing, when you're down and out, when you are really looking into other people's eyes for the basic things in life, for help to get out of the weather. I just need to be in your shop just to get out of the weather. I can't be anywhere else. And he started talking with me. And it's amazing. While we were talking, another guy came into the shop, but he was really worse for wear than I was. So he was looking a lot worse than me. And he was on the road for a longer time. And he walked into the shop and he was so amazing. The and his wife who's working there, when he got into the shop, they immediately asked him, can we help you? Here's some coffee, here's biscuit for you. They changed towards this other guy. And I thought that is good. If somebody can just see someone else for who they really are, not just for a nuisance, not just for somebody who's going to to take up some of my time, but to just see the person, then this whole walk would have been solely it would have been die moeite werd. It would be worth it for somebody else to just look at other people in a different way. So in that second-hand shop, me and the guy started talking, and I said to him, but we can have something to eat outside. We took the Daniela of the previous day in Bredasdorp gave me 2 chops from the chops that we barbecued. So they gave it to me. And I said to him, but I have a choppy that I will share with him. And we went to the church next door in Napier, and underneath the church tower, there was a piece of grass. We sat down and I gave him one of the chops. But guys, before I could have opened mine, his was finished. He was so hungry. He was in a total different state than where I was. And we were started talking on the same level. So we talked to each other, and he didn't know who I was, where I come from. He just saw somebody else on the road. And he started sharing with me with no pretense, with nothing to ask of me, just as people. And it was illuminating to just hear his story without a normal story that we get at our front doors, where people come to you with a long story of why they are where they are, what they need from you, how they need it. He just talked to me like a person. And it was amazing to see that when it comes down to it, he has the same struggles in different ways, but he also has his struggles in life. And I can also speak to him on an equal foot. So we had a very nice lunch of 2 choppies and shared a bit and talked. And later on, we had a little nap in front of the church. Each of us was sleeping there. And there's nothing to be stolen from me. So I have nothing that he could steal. He has nothing that I could steal. So at that level, we could just lie in front of the church on the grass and have a little bit of a power nap that afternoon. When we got up, I told him that if he was ever in Caledon, he must come to that and that church, and I will sort out for him some place to sleep. And he was looking at me very strangely, and he asked how, what, where. I said, no, you can just go to the church and ask for me. And I gave him my name, and the people there will tell him where I am or phone me, and I will sort him out. So that next Saturday, he actually did that. And he came to the church and he called me, or the people at the church called me, and I gave him some place to sleep. So he came to my house and slept at my house for one night, and I gave him food and everything. So that conversation kept on going, but it was quite nice for me just to see how we can be, as God's children, on the same level without any pretense. So from Napier, I had an ex-dominee that I knew about, or that I know, that lived in Napier. So I walked from the second-hand shop, and I thought, okay, maybe I must go and see if they're at home, if I can maybe sleep at their house. So that night I went to that dominee's house, and he immediately gave me some place to sleep, and I slept very well in Napier. And the next day, the gout was a bit better, but the going was very tough. So I put in the kilometers towards Caledon, so back on a circle route, and that was quite a long walk. That day was tough, and I had nobody who gave me a lift, so I hiked the whole day. I got no lifts that day. Late at evening, so it's not quite accurately, not no lifts. Late at evening, I got a lift for the last couple of kilometers, and I came that day to Caledon with a feeling of blessedness, just to be blessed to see all these parts, but also to experience the feeling of really being at some point so alone that you don't know what to do next, but in the same sense, be totally cared for, provided for, that I don't know where it will come from, but at some point somebody will just stop at you. Some child will just help you. people will just see you, even though there's also a lot of people who will not take that responsibility, will negate that responsibility to care for other people. So for me, all in all, it was a walk to let me see um, God's creation in a new way. It was a walk that inspired me to see people. The guy at my door, where we started at, to maybe feel the feeling that I feel when there's a knock on my door today, and to know that my heart is open enough to be able to care if I need to be care if the person needs to be cared for, to help if he needs help, and to really say that I can see the person at the other side of the door. My daughter asked that question, Meneer, oom, are you a scallum? And I think today, when I look back at my whole experience, that will actually be a good question. Instead of just showing me the road, of just yelling at me, or just saying that I must go away with very bad language, if that person could have maybe just asking, Dewald, are you a scallum? And then I could have responded and said, no, I'm not a scallum. I just need a hard cement floor to sleep on tonight. I don't need anything else. I can just explain what I needed. But so much of the time, the people didn't even give me a chance to do that. So today, I would say the inspiration that I took away was that I must really ask people that what I feel. If I want to ask him, are you a scallum? I want to ask it. And he can tell me what he is or what he is not, or not. If I feel that the Holy Ghost give me the inspiration to give the person a place to sleep, I must be able to do that. So after this trip, I converted a little room outside my house, so also to keep my family safe. So it's not fair to let anybody into your house. So I have the privilege to have a room that has a toilet and warm water, and I converted it so that somebody can stay there for a night and have some place to sleep and be safe at that place. So that's something practical that I did afterwards. But in the same sense, I think the day-to-day thing is to really see people for who they are and to ask them if you are not sure, who are you? And that's maybe something that Bright Star also helps a lot with, to get us to that point to know who we are and to live according to that, to live according to our life purpose. And yeah, that is more or less how my walk went. Um, I hope you are still awake. But also, if you have written down maybe some of the feelings that came to mind, some of the things that you would experience or experienced already that you would like to share, it would be awesome to learn from you guys as well. Hear from your experiences, how we can love each other, see each other, be with each other, even though it's sometimes difficult. So, Amanda, I can quickly say my next two things for 2026 would be I'm going to walk across the Drakensberg. So that's something that I want to do. So to see where the Voortrekkers walked. So I want to do the 200 kilometers right across the Drakensberg. And the other thing that I would love to do next year, but that is still in the planning phases, is to go and see where the Nile River originates from. So if there's any of you guys who would like to go and see where the Nile River starts, give me a shout and I would love to go and see that with you.
Yeah. Ewald, this was such a joy to listen to you. You're asking if we're asleep. There's no way to sleep. And the first thing that I can just comment is that we truly pray that there will be no gout and no blisters for you for 2026. That would be the starting point. I think there's beautiful comments and maybe very interesting questions. So I would love to open the conversation. If you have anything to say to Dewald or ask Dewald, you are welcome. Just unmute and then I can see if you are with you. You're welcome if you want to write something in the chat also. But
Amanda, I'm gonna kick off. Die
Thank you.
wat I'm online and wow, I'm in tears now. This has been
Mm.
a holy moment for me. I'm at the end of a 4 month sabbatical,
Yes.
and sure, this last week or so had been the most healing time in my life. In this 4 months, I'm a missionary working in the Dorans, and yeah, I'm not going to tell everything, but I just want to thank you for now. I would like to, Amanda, if Dewald, if I may get your contact details, I would like to. I realized in this time, I when I hear things, I need to have time to ponder and think about it and kind of digest what I've heard. So I would like to digest what I've heard now and maybe later on communicate with you. But I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. This was a holy moment for me.
Thank you
I'm
so
so
much.
glad.
Um,
Amanda, you're more than welcome to give them my details as well. If you want to give me a shout later on or a phone call, you're more than welcome.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Deopold. We will do that. Maybe I can already also say that we did make this recording. So if you want to share it with someone, you can just contact us and we will gladly share it with you. Deopold, it was very interesting. The emotions, the I don't want to say roller coaster, but it was kind of, we're excited with you and we're thankful with you. And then we furious with you. You just took us on this journey. So, Delisha, I see you have something to comment there.
I don't know if I will go as far as walking anywhere. And I don't know if I'll take someone into my house. I just don't know when you know it's safe or whatnot. But what I did
Yes.
hear you say, and what I would like to take with me is that we should see people. And I think we must do
Mm.
that even day to day. You don't have to walk anywhere. We work at such a high rate that we don't stand still and look anybody in the
Mm.
eyes some days, I think. So I would really like to take that with me. I am very impressed with what you did. I don't know if I want to do it.
Yes, I think also this is really not something that is a recipe. So it's not something that
Mm-mm.
everybody must do or experience in that way that I did
Mm.
it. But I think the takeaway is spot on to see people to let the Lord's light shine through us. That's amazing. And the blessings that the Lord gives us when we start to see people is also just amazing.
And there's so little of that happens. I really think we miss a lot and we miss a lot of opportunities where we can give something.
Yes,
Dankie,
for sure.
Dewald.
It's a plezier.
Someone else that have a comment or a question?
Ja, kan ek sê ons sê altyd en ek gaan dit nou in Afrikaans sê want mens kan nou nie anders sê dit is ek en jy wil net raak gesien wees. Ons wil net raak gesien wees dat iemand someone to realize. Ja, toe. So dis regtig. Elkeen van ons se behoefte net om dat iemand vir my raak sien, vir my erken vir wie ek is. Of my net raak, mens kan hom maar sê net raak sien.
Ja.
'n Baie basiese behoefte, né?
Yeah. And I think also, Rita, when we see somebody else, when you just see somebody, it's also to know what's your calling. And that's also what Bright Star teaches us quite a lot, to know what is your roeping, what is my calling, and mine are different from yours. So it can be that I have the capacity to help somebody at my house, but you don't have that. But when we talk to each other, we can really see the person and get him in touch with me, for example. And just to everybody play their own part in the bigger scheme of things.
Yeah.
If I may, Amanda, sorry, just coming there with Rita, the whole thing of people seeing you, also belonging. Where do I belong? That's another thing, and that was also something that God had been speaking to me in my life this last week.
Yes.
Thank you, Alma. I see Henriette is also unmuted.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how all these buttons work. But something I would like to share with my own experience, and being a female, you must always be careful with who you let in your space and who not. But I've been in trouble quite a few times if in the sense that I'll help somebody and that person will come back and back and back, and later on I find being, abused by the person. So that was something that was a challenge for me. But what I did is also in this, I asked God to show me when am I to react and when not. And he did. He does. Even in that, it's kind of, you can approach or you can engage. And there was this one guy, many years ago, we were on our way back from Hermanus, and in Bloemfontein at the garage, we stopped like we normally did to fill our car. And suddenly we saw this one guy sitting in a car with the most beautiful little dog. Obviously, I saw the dog first, but in any case, then we noticed he had a sign in his window, need fuel, please. And he was just sitting inside his car reading, and the dog was outside or whatever. And I suddenly just had this conviction that I must go and speak to him. Anyway, long story short, we filled his tank, and he was a friend of mine for many, many, many years. Um, and that was somebody that we filled his car. Yeah, we filled his car. He was on his way back. So there I picked up a friend, somebody that comes out of an environment that I know nothing about. And it was really a blessing in the end. But if your worry is, and unfortunately, there's always people that make it difficult in the sense that you don't know if you're safe. I'm not going to stop in the dark next to somebody because I don't know. There's so many tricks. But for me, the
Yes.
solution is to, in that moment, just put it before God and react according to what the Spirit leads you.
Yes. Yes, I think that is a very, very good way to approach any of these things. Really, where the Spirit leads us.
Thank you, Dewald. Hanley's got something to say. I just want to share on the chat that Ilse said it's an amazing testimony. Thank you so much for sharing. And Henriette van Deventer said, thank you, Dewald. Your story made me pause. Though simply told, the journey you described from day 1 to 7 carries a quiet depth, and I'm certain the emotions you felt along the way ran deep. I think it's nice that you can hear that, Handy.
Yes, Dewald, thanks a lot for your story. When Amanda told me long time ago, I just knew we must hear this. We must hear this. As Henriette also said, I have been I don't know, gevang, caught in, giving money, giving, and then people coming back, and then the end you hear the stories in the whole community, and then I realize it's most probably a scam that
Yes.
I now gave money for. So now I am quite skrikkerig, and that then I often just say, I don't give money, but are you hungry? Then I'll make a sandwich and a nice cup of coffee, especially in the winter when it's cold. And what I also learned from my sister, she often has a bag of apples in her car. And then, you always get the note at the robot, hungry, please help. So if you can just at least give something, that's can stop the hunger. And
Yes.
also this newspaper challenge, a challenge, the Good News newspaper that I get from one of our colleagues. Now that I've got this, that that I distribute, I can at least give something, if it's not bread, when I say die lewende brood, because people can't believe when they knock at your door and they ask, please, just even a piece of bread. Now, I stopped eating bread, so I don't buy bread, and people at the door can't believe, that you don't have bread in your house. And I can't, as Marie Antoinette, give them cake because I don't have cake either. So just to at least give, say, a fruit and good news. And I have seen, even at the robots, when I give it and I come back home, I've even seen someone on the pavement reading it. When I give it up, I pray over it and say, Lord, thank you. This is seed that I'm sowing, and thank you that you will water it and make it, or let it grow. And because one doesn't want to send someone just away, but how do you do it if you don't have something that you can give? And I don't want to give money, because even at the robots, I've seen, people giving money, and then in the late afternoon, you see what they do with the money or what they did. But this has helped me a lot to at least give something positive, and
Yes.
and that the Lord can use. So that's just what I do. But thanks a lot again, Dewald.
Thank you,
Awesome
Annelie.
testimony. Awesome.
I think, Dewald, for time's sake, we've got about 5 minutes left. Janette, you've got the word. And Janette, when you've finished, Dewald, would it be okay that you pray for us for what you've experienced? I think it will be very special that we can journey with you in ending with prayer. Janette.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dewald, and hats off to you. Thank you for being so obedient to the Holy Spirit and taking on this journey. I think it's really meant a lot to a lot of people, not just the people that you met on the way, but your own congregation and your family. So thank you for sharing your story with us. My one observation is, especially regarding feelings, when you walk, things happen a lot slower than when you ride by car or bicycle or whatever. So you have a lot more time to digest life and your own feelings. So I think a lot more of your own feelings also rise because you have that time to spend on the road. And as a fellow journey on my own Camino walker, I really appreciated your story. It's very different, but you walked a different way. And I appreciate what you shared. Thank you. A book I want to recommend is The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. It turned out to be a movie also that was on Ster-Kinekor some time ago. But if you like reading about something like that, it really is a good book. There's a lot of meaning in it about his own journey, just walking. But thank you so much for sharing.
I'm going to look at that one. That would be nice to read.
We said that you must pray now, Dewald, but I see AP is unmuted. We would love to you. I don't know what your name is. Please share with us, Mduzi.
Thank you so much. My name is Mduzi. Quickly. Thank you so much for really taking us out into your journey. I learned a lot. I actually, I'm repenting of some few things here. But my takeaway is that thank you for helping us to see, for helping me to see people, and actually give them a chance and love and encouragement. The story you spoke about your child, how she asked, and also the people that would shout at you from a distance. And as well, as someone who's a missionary, the pastor whom that wonderful granny had faith in to really help you, but the pastor couldn't send. I don't blame him, but also it speaks to me. Sometimes we are afraid, we are controlled by fear, And instead of trying to take time to discern, we normally judge. So thank you so much for making me to repent and also to pray, to cry out for discernment. When I now look at people now, it's going to be a different story. Thank you so much. And thank you also for making us also see that we can be grateful for the little things that we can take for granted. I was with you when you were walking. I was even writing down things. And lastly, thank you as well for helping me to see that people that enter into a state of hopelessness, they end up not seeing the beauty of things. So thank you so much. I would love that next time when you take a walk, may God help me also I want to experience what you experienced. So thank you so much. I know I'm trying to be quick. I have points here. I'm just jumping, but I'm grateful. I thank God for you. Amen.
Amen.
Duzi, that was such a beautiful summary. It was such a joy to hear your experience. Thank you. Raylene, you were unmuted. Anything you would like to add? You're okay. Dewald, we just thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your preparation, but thank you for letting us put on our tackies and walk with you for this moment. And thank you for closing in prayer for us.
Okay, Amanda, let's close our eyes and we can pray together. Father, it's an honor to share little bits of our journeys with each other and to learn from each other, to see how you work through us. And Father, to be with you tonight and not to judge anybody at any point, but just to love each other, to see each other the way you see us. Father, we want to ask for that guidance and that wisdom to live every day to the fullest in your teenwoordigheid, there where you are. Father, it's an honor to be in service of you. Each of us in our own capacities, where we are every day. And Father, thank you that you will never leave us. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for what you did for us on the cross and that we can live out of your grace. We bring all the honor, all the glory to you, Lord. Amen.
Thank you to all of you that you joined us this evening. It was pure joy to see you. And as we always say with Bright Star, yes to joy. May the rest of your evening be great. Be blessed.